The storm rolled in before dawn, cracking the sky open as if the heavens themselves were trying to reveal a truth she had spent years refusing to see. Charlotte stood at the edge of the ferry dock in coastal Florida, her suitcase damp, her heartbeat louder than the waves slamming against the wooden posts. Everything inside her felt stretched thin, her fear, her longing, her hope, and that quiet ache she carried whenever she looked at her best friend, Harper, who was walking toward her with that familiar, steady smile. Charlotte told herself this was just a vacation, just a chance to escape the noise of her routines. But deep down, she felt the shift coming. Something was going to break open on that island. If you believe in kindness, in unexpected second chances, and in the kind of love that finds you when you least expect it, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support truly helps this channel grow. Charlotte and Harper had been inseparable since college in North Carolina. For nearly a decade, they had traveled everywhere together: road trips, weekend cabins, spontaneous hikes. But this trip to a quiet island off the Florida coast felt different from the start. It had been Harper's idea, a celebration after completing a demanding year in her nursing program. Charlotte, burnt out from her job in architectural design, had agreed instantly. They needed a reset, something peaceful, something beautiful. Neither of them admitted what else they needed: clarity, space, and maybe the courage to feel what had been simmering quietly, painfully, between them. From the moment they stepped onto the ferry, the world seemed to slow. Pelicans skimmed across the surface of the water as the boat carved through the waves. The salt air clung to their skin, and Charlotte felt the tightness in her chest begin to unravel. Harper stood beside her at the railing, her hair brushing in the wind, her laugh soft but warm as she talked about all the places she wanted them to visit once they arrived. Charlotte watched her, pretending to listen, pretending everything was simple. But something tender and terrifying had begun growing in her heart over the years, something she had pushed down out of fear: fear of losing their friendship, fear of wanting too much, fear of her feelings being misunderstood or rejected. The island welcomed them with the scent of citrus trees and warm sand. Their rented cottage sat just a few steps from the shoreline, a cozy, sun-washed space filled with woven blankets, seashell frames, and windows that invited the ocean inside. Harper walked through every corner with excitement, claiming the little reading nook near the back window as her new thinking spot. Charlotte smiled, watching the joy flicker across her face. She loved seeing Harper happy. She always had. For the first few days, life settled into a gentle rhythm. They biked through the narrow island roads lined with tropical palms, they walked barefoot along the beach at sunrise, and they shared quiet meals prepared in the tiny kitchen while music played low in the background. Everything felt close, intimate, almost suspended in time. But Charlotte found herself struggling, constantly balancing the comfort of old familiarity with the growing weight of her emotions. She tried to hide it, burying her heart under jokes, giving herself distance by volunteering to take evening walks alone, focusing too hard on photographing the scenery instead of listening to Harper's stories. But Harper noticed. She always noticed. One late afternoon, after a long bike ride, they found themselves on a secluded stretch of beach where the sand felt untouched and the waves hummed like a lullaby. The sky burned orange and red as the sun dropped toward the horizon. Harper sat in the sand, knees pulled up, watching the water quietly. Charlotte sat beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of her skin. A soft wind rolled in, lifting the ends of Harper's hair, and something in Charlotte trembled. Her throat tightened, her eyes stung, and for a moment she believed she might finally speak the truth she'd carried for so long. But the fear returned stronger than ever, silencing her. She wished, desperately, that she could be brave. That evening, everything shifted. A sudden storm swept over the island, fierce and unexpected. The winds rattled their cottage, and the power flickered off, plunging them into darkness broken only by the occasional flash of lightning outside. Charlotte felt the air grow heavy with tension, not from the storm, but from the unspoken words trapped in the dimly lit room. Harper was sitting cross-legged on the couch, illuminated briefly each time lightning cracked across the sky. Charlotte could see worry in her eyes, not fear of the storm, but fear for her. Harper asked if she was okay. Charlotte nodded, but the tears welling in her eyes betrayed her. The storm outside intensified, and suddenly everything Charlotte had been holding in the stress from work, the burnout, the loneliness she hadn't admitted, and the love she had buried, surged to the surface. She felt her body tremble, and without warning, she broke. Harper didn't ask questions. She simply reached out, pulling Charlotte into her arms, holding her tightly as thunder rolled and rain hammered against the windows. Charlotte felt her heart shatter and rebuild itself all at once in that embrace. In Harper's arms, she felt safe and understood. The storm lasted through the night. By morning, the world glistened with renewal. Puddles shimmered like glass across the dirt roads, and the ocean looked strangely calm after its screaming fury. Charlotte woke up on the couch with a blanket draped over her and Harper sleeping in the chair nearby, head tilted to the side. Something about the softness of that scene, the care, the closeness, broke her again. But this time, it broke her open in a gentle way. As the day unfolded, they explored the island again, but something in their energy had changed. The silence between them felt meaningful, comforting. Charlotte found herself noticing everything: the way Harper's smile softened when she looked at her, the way her hand would brush against Charlotte's arm a beat longer than necessary, the way her presence felt like a lighthouse guiding her back to herself. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't wishful thinking. Something real was unfolding. One evening near the end of their trip, they returned to the secluded beach where they had watched the sunset before. The air was warm, the ocean stretching endlessly into a pastel sky. Charlotte felt her heartbeat quicken, but this time she didn't run from it. She let the fear sit beside her, not control her. The truth had lived inside her for so long it felt like part of her bones, and she knew she couldn't go back home carrying this silence any longer. She couldn't lose herself out of fear of losing Harper. She couldn't bury her heart again. She sat beside Harper, sinking her fingers into the cool sand, and finally allowed herself to breathe deeply, to feel, to step into the unknown. Words didn't spill out all at once, they rose slowly, vulnerably, shaped by years of quiet longing. She told Harper that the past few years had been difficult. She confessed the exhaustion, the sense of emptiness she had been carrying, and how the world had often felt too heavy. Then her voice trembled as she admitted that somewhere along the way, her feelings had shifted into something deeper, something she had been terrified to acknowledge. The fear of losing their friendship, the fear of misreading every moment, the fear of wanting someone so much it hurt. She confessed all of it. Harper didn't speak immediately. Instead, she took Charlotte's hand in hers, gently, as if it were something delicate and precious. And then she leaned forward, resting her forehead softly against Charlotte's. It was a simple gesture, but it held everything: understanding, tenderness, and a truth of her own that she had been too afraid to voice. When she finally spoke, her voice was warm and steady. She told Charlotte she had felt the same way for years. She had waited, quietly, hoping Charlotte might one day feel safe enough to let her in. The ocean seemed to hush around them. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was calm, grounding, breathtakingly gentle, the kind of love that grows slowly, like tides reshaping the shore. They sat together until the sun dipped below the horizon, holding hands, letting the silence say what words couldn't. By the time they returned to their cottage, something in them had changed forever. They had arrived on the island as friends. They would leave as something deeper, something truer, something they both had wanted but never dared to believe they deserved. Love hadn't found them easily or quickly, it had waited patiently, just like the island itself, ready when they were finally brave enough to choose it. If this story touched your heart even just a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach more people who need them.